Right now, millions of people take a daily pill to replace a hormone that dictates the speed of every single cell in their body. I mean, it is consistently one of the most prescribed drugs on Earth.
Yeah, it's usually right at the top of the list.
Exactly. Yet for decades, doctors successfully treated this disease by, get this, injecting patients with minced sheep glands. And this was long before they even knew what molecule they were trying to replace.
Which is just wild to think about from a modern perspective.
It really is. So welcome to a brand new deep dive. Today, we are exploring hypothyroidism. We're going to unpack exactly what happens when your body's master engine runs out of gas, how a lack of thyroid hormone slows everything down.
Right, and we'll also be navigating the surprisingly blurry line between what is considered normal and what actually gets labeled as a disease.
Because to understand the confusion, we really have to start with what is physically happening inside the body. At its core, hypothyroidism is a failure. It's what happens when the thyroid gland, which sits right at the base of your neck, fails to synthesize and release enough thyroid hormone to meet your body's metabolic demands.
And we are primarily talking about two specific hormones here. Thyroxine, which is known as T4, and triiodothyronine, known as T3.
Wait, I have to stop you there because, the numbers, T3 and T4, what do they actually stand for? I always just assumed it was the order they were discovered in, movies in a franchise or something.
No, not at all. It's actually a literal description of their physical structure.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The numbers 3 and 4 represent the exact number of iodine atoms that are attached to the hormone molecule. So triiodothyronine has 3 iodine atoms. Thyroxine has 4.
Okay, got it.
And that might sound like a tiny biochemical detail, but as we'll see later, that physical requirement for iodine is the key to understanding one of the biggest public health crises in human history.
That makes so much sense. So these hormones, T3 and T4, are basically the chemical pacemakers for the body. They set the metabolic rate for nearly every cell you have.
Exactly.
When you don't have enough of them, it's not a localized injury. Like if you break your arm is broken, but your liver works fine. With hypothyroidism, the lack of hormone creates this massive global slowdown.
That's the perfect way to describe it. It is a systemic deceleration. I mean, every cell in your body is suddenly being told to power down. Your heart rate literally drops.
Wow.
Your gut motility slows down, which leads to severe constipation.
Yeah.
Your core body temperature falls, so you feel freezing all the time.
Just constantly cold.
Right. Your cognition gets foggy, and even the cellular turnover of, your hair and skin just drastically decelerate.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the way the body attempts to regulate this before you ever feel those symptoms is wild.
Yeah.
It operates on this complex loop called the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis.
That is a mouthful.
It is an alphabet soup of acronyms, but I think I have a way to visualize it. Tell me if this works. It's like a home heating system.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So the hypothalamus in your brain is the thermostat on the wall. It's constantly sensing the temperature or, the metabolic energy in the blood. When it senses a chill, the thermostat sends an electrical signal.
Right, and in the body, that signal is TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone, which is released by the pituitary gland.
Exactly. And the thyroid gland in your neck. That's the furnace down in the basement.
That analogy holds up really well, but let's push it a step further to explain the blood test, because that's where people get so confused.
Okay, yeah.
The TSH is the signal asking for heat. The thyroid gland is the furnace that burns the fuel to pump T3 and T4 into the house. So what happens when the furnace breaks down?
Well, the house gets cold, and the thermostat upstairs in the brain panics because the temperature is dropping, so it starts screaming for more heat. It pumps out more and more of that TSH signal.
Precisely. Which explains the most counterintuitive part of the diagnosis for patients. Your TSH blood levels actually rise when your actual thyroid hormone levels fall.
Oh, because the furnace is broken, so the brain has cranked the thermostat to maximum.
Exactly. And because we understand that negative feedback loop, we know both the what and the WHY of modern testing. Why do doctors test TSH first instead of just measuring T3 or T4?
Right, why not just measure the heat?
Because that pituitary signal starts rising long before the actual hormone levels fall completely out of range. The brain senses the furnace struggling before the house actually feels cold to you.
So it's an early warning system.
The ultimate early warning system. A rising TSH tells you trouble is coming.
It's an incredibly elegant, logical system when you map it out like that. Thermostat, signal, furnace. But the medical community did not discover it this way at all, right? They discovered this entire system entirely backwards.
They had to. I mean, they were observing the devastating physical effects of this global slowdown decades before they had any concept of hormones or feedback loops or even the molecular structure of iodine.
It just saw the symptoms.
Exactly. The clinical syndrome was staring them in the face long before the biochemical cause was even a theory.
The timeline is staggering to me. Go back to 1873. An English physician named William Gull publishes a paper describing middle-aged women who developed this puffy, waxy thickening of the skin combined with severe mental slowing and lethargy.
Right.
And he called it a cretinoid state. Like he could see the slowdown, but he had absolutely zero idea why it was happening.
And a quick note on that terminology, because today the word cretin is thrown around as a casual, playground insult.
Yeah, completely.
But historically, cretinism was a medical term used to describe a devastating, irreversible neurological and physical impairment, usually present right from birth. Gull was comparing these adult women to that severe baseline, noting they were acquiring a similar slowed-down state later in life.
Right, like an adult onset version. And then in 1877, another physician, William Miller Ord, officially coins the term myxoedema for this condition. Myxa, meaning mucus, and oedema, meaning swelling.
Because he realized that the puffy skin wasn't just fat or water weight.
Exactly. It was caused by these mucin-like deposits literally accumulating in the tissues because the cellular turnover had just ground to a halt. The garbage just wasn't being taken out.
But the real breakthrough, the actual connection to the thyroid gland itself, didn't happen until 1888. Ord chaired a clinical committee that finally connected the dots. They linked this adult myxedema to endemic cretinism, and crucially, they linked both of them to patients who had their thyroid glands surgically removed.
And this is the part that fascinates me. There was a Swiss surgeon named Theodor Kocher who had been performing thousands of thyroidectomies, mostly to treat massive goiters in the neck.
Right, the huge swellings.
Yeah. And Kocher meticulously documented that when you completely remove the gland, patients inevitably develop this severe wasting and systemic slowing down.
That surgical proof was undeniable. It essentially proved that whatever this mysterious gland in the neck was doing, its total absence caused a massive metabolic collapse.
It was a huge deal.
Oh, absolutely. It was such a monumental realization that it actually helped earn Kocher a Nobel Prize in 1909.
Which sets the stage for 1891 when an English physician named George Redmayne Murray decides to actually treat a myxedema patient
How?
by injecting her with an extract of minced sheep's thyroid gland, and her symptoms measurably improved.
It's amazing.
But wait, I have to push back here because the timeline just doesn't compute for me. So you're telling me physicians were injecting patients with minced sheep glands and later feeding them desiccated animal thyroid tablets decades before they even knew what molecule they were trying to replace.
I know it sounds like witchcraft by modern standards, but what's fascinating here is that it's actually a triumph of pure clinical observation. You are exactly right. They successfully treated the disease in 1891 by replacing the missing tissue with sheep extract.
That's so crazy.
But the active hormone, T4, wasn't actually isolated and crystallized until 1914 by Edward Calvin Kendall. And that second hormone, T3, which is actually the more potent active form, that wasn't identified until 1952.
No way, 1952.
Yes. For over half a century, medicine was successfully replacing a hormone it couldn't even name, isolate, or measure. It's a testament to the value of just rigorously watching the patient and observing what actually works.
That is incredible. But that was the past where they were just trying to replace a mystery substance. Let's move to the real-world root causes today. If we know how the furnace works now, what actually causes it to break down? I mean, usually it comes down to three main culprits, right?
Yeah, three main ways it fails.
Yeah.
The first, and historically the most significant, is simply running out of raw materials. Remember those 3 and 4 iodine atoms we talked about?
The ones on the T3 and T4 molecules.
Yes, exactly. Thyroid hormone synthesis absolutely requires dietary iodine. Without it, the furnace has zero fuel to burn.
And this physically created the historical goiter belt, right? In iodine-poor regions, usually mountainous areas like the Alps or the Himalayas, entire populations developed massively enlarged the thyroids, these goiters.
And there's a mechanical reason for that. When the thyroid doesn't have enough iodine, the brain senses low hormone levels and cranks up the TSH signal.
The thermostat yelling for heat.
Right. But that signal doesn't just say make more hormone, It also tells the thyroid gland to grow. The gland undergoes cellular hypertrophy. It physically expands, building a bigger and bigger factory in the neck, desperately trying to cast a wider net to trap whatever trace amounts of iodine it can find circulating in the blood.
So it's the body overcompensating to try and save itself. But the
Yeah.
consequences of not getting that iodine were brutal. Severe deficiency during pregnancy meant the fetus couldn't develop a central nervous system properly. But this also leads to one of the most stunning public health interventions in human history. In the late 1960s and early 70s, researchers conducted this landmark trial in the Jimmy Valley of Papua New Guinea. And they proved that simply injecting iodized oil into women before they became pregnant completely prevented neurological damage and cognitive impairment in their subsequent children.
It's hard to overstate the magnitude of that finding. And in the United States, the fix was even simpler. In 1924, Michigan mandated iodized salt,
Just regular table salt.
just table salt. By adding a microscopic trace amount of iodine to everyday salt, they basically eradicated the American goiter build entirely.
Just imagine the sheer scale of that impact for a second. We changed the cognitive trajectory of millions of people just by altering salt.
It is a massive victory. But, we have to be clear-eyed about the present reality. Despite how cheap and easy iodized salt is, iodine deficiency remains, by a wide margin, the single most common cause of preventable intellectual impairment worldwide today.
Really? Still?
Still, it is still the #1 cause of hypothyroidism globally.
Wow. But not in the US or other iodine-sufficient countries. Here, the #1 cause is the second way the furnace breaks, which is the immune system acting as a saboteur.
Yes, Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Instead of a lack of fuel, your own body produces antibodies that actively attack the thyroid gland. Specifically, antibodies against thyroid peroxidase, or TPO.
Wait, if my immune system is going rogue, why does it target the thyroid specifically? Why not my heart or my lungs?
That's where the TPO comes in. Thyroid peroxidase is a very specific enzyme. Its entire job is to attach that dietary iodine onto a protein backbone to build the T3 and T4 molecules.
So it only lives in the thyroid.
Right, it only exists in the thyroid factory. In Hashimoto's, the immune system somehow loses its tolerance for this enzyme. It misidentifies TPO as a dangerous foreign invader, so it sends in lymphocytes, white blood cells, to destroy the tissue.
It's like friendly fire. The security guards at the factory lose their facial recognition software and start attacking the very assembly line workers they're supposed to protect.
That's a great way to put it.
And this was first described by Hikaru Hashimoto in 1912. He found these thyroids were just infiltrated with these immune cells. It's also, 5 to 10 times more common in women? And it loves to travel with other autoimmune conditions like type 1 diabetes or celiac disease.
Exactly. Which brings us to the third way the system fails, which is congenital hypothyroidism. Roughly 1 in 2,000 to 4,000 babies are simply born with a thyroid gland that is missing, misplaced, or entirely non-functional.
And again, the public health victory here is staggering. Since the 1970s, virtually every developed country has instituted a mandatory newborn heel prick test to check TSH levels right after birth. Just a simple 2-drop blood test.
Yeah, just 2 drops.
And if a baby is born without a thyroid, we catch it immediately, start them on a liquid synthetic hormone within weeks, and their brain develops completely normally. We basically deleted an entire category of permanent physical and cognitive disability with 2 drops of blood.
It is arguably one of modern medicine's highest yield interventions. So, look, we know the history, we understand the causes, and we have a highly sensitive TSH blood test. Diagnosing it should be incredibly straightforward today, right?
Right. If it's just a thermostat, you just read the number in the wall. If it's out of range, you fix it.
It sounds so simple. But this is exactly where the textbook definition shatters in clinical practice. The most hotly contested battleground in endocrinology right now is defining where normal ends and hypothyroid begins.
The cutoff debate. The conventional reference range for that TSH signal, the accepted normal, is roughly 0.4 up to 4.5 or 5.0. But in 2002, a major clinical biochemistry academy proposed narrowing that upper limit all the way down to 2.5.
Right.
They argued that if you look at people who have zero trace of those Hashimoto's antibodies, a true, perfectly healthy normal almost never goes above 2.5.
But you can't just change a reference range in a vacuum. The pushback from the medical community was fierce. In 2005, 2 prominent endocrinologists, Martin Sirks and Joseph Hollowell, published an analysis showing the real-world consequences of that change.
What did they find?
They proved that if you lowered the cutoff to 2.5, you would instantly reclassify roughly 1 in 5 American adults as hypothyroid overnight.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about the power of a single decimal point on a piece of paper for a second. Moving a number from 4.5 to 2.5 doesn't physically change your body. You didn't suddenly get sicker.
No, not at all.
But it changes whether society and your insurance company labels you as diseased. It creates a massive population of newly sick people out of thin air.
That's the core of the debate. Do we treat a number or do we treat a person? The range hasn't been formally lowered, but that argument is now a permanent part of how we look at the disease. And, it's not the only controversy.
Yeah, there's more.
There is an equally intense debate over how to fuel the furnace once it's broken. The gold standard treatment is just giving synthetic T4, which is levothyroxine. The medical assumption is that your body's tissues will act like a smart converter, turning that storage hormone, T4, into the active T3 hormone right where it's needed.
But a very vocal, very frustrated minority of patients report that they still have profound brain fog, deep fatigue, and sluggishness on T4 alone. Their TSH labs look perfectly normal to the doctor, but they still feel terrible. So they ask for a combination of T4 and T3. Why doesn't T4 work for everyone?
Well, the clinical trials investigating this are frustratingly mixed. Most large controlled trials have failed to show a clear, definitive benefit of adding T3 for the average patient.
Really? Even with all the anecdotal evidence?
Yeah, but the nuance might lie in our genetics. There is ongoing research into whether a specific genetic subgroup people with a variant in a gene called DIO2 might be the exception.
Okay, what does that gene do?
DIO2 codes for the specific enzyme that rips that fourth iodine atom off of T4 to turn it into active T3. If your body is genetically less efficient at doing that conversion, pumping you full of T4 might not relieve your symptoms at the cellular level.
Because it's just piling up as T4.
Right.
But the desperation for an answer when you feel terrible can lead people to some dark places. There is a massive cautionary tale from the 1990s called Wilson's temperature syndrome.
Oh, yes.
A doctor proposed that people with perfectly normal thyroid blood tests, but who felt fatigued and had a slightly lower body temperature, actually had a hidden, mysterious thyroid issue.
This raises an important question, though, because it's a textbook example of the danger of treating vague symptoms without objective lab evidence. Because the proposed treatment for this pseudo-diagnosis was giving patients high, constantly escalating doses of pure active T3 hormone.
And it was a disaster. The American Thyroid Association had to step in and forcefully reject it. Because if you give heavy doses of pure active thyroid hormone to someone whose thyroid is actually working fine, you induce severe drug-induced thyrotoxicosis.
It's incredibly dangerous.
You're throwing their heart into palpitations, causing cardiac arrhythmias, and actually accelerating bone loss.
It shows exactly what happens when plausible-sounding pseudoscience steps in to fill the gap of patients' unresolved symptoms. Which brings us to the broader myths surrounding this condition. Because symptoms like fatigue, brain fog, and weight gain are so universally human, hypothyroidism has become a massive magnet for misinformation.
We absolutely have to bust some of those myths right now. First up, hyperthyroidism causes massive obesity.
Yeah, I hear that one all the time.
While lack of hormone does lower your metabolic rate, the weight gain directly caused by a failing thyroid is typically modest, usually just a few kilograms. And it's largely driven by fluid and salt retention. Remember the mucin swelling we talked about earlier? It is not a massive accumulation of fat. The reality is, most significantly obese patients actually have completely normal thyroid function.
Another dangerous myth is relying purely on how you feel over science. People think, I'm tired, I'm constantly cold, my mood is low, I must be hypothyroid. But fatigue and cold intolerance overlap heavily with anemia, clinical depression, and just the simple reality of aging.
You can't just guess.
Right, you must test the TSH. You cannot accurately diagnose a broken thermostat just by guessing if the house feels a bit drafty today.
And that leads directly to the most dangerous myth of all. The supplement aisle. You walk into a pharmacy and you see rows of over-the-counter thyroid support pills promising energy and weight loss. But because supplements are largely unregulated, some of them contain actual desiccated animal thyroid hormone.
This is critical to understand. Which means a healthy person taking them for a little afternoon energy boost could inadvertently give themselves real thyrotoxicosis. They risk sending themselves into atrial fibrillation or accelerating osteoporosis, just like the victims of Wilson syndrome.
There's also a big misconception that once you finally get diagnosed and find your levothyroxine dose, you are just set for life. Not true at all. Your required dose is dynamic, it changes with your body weight, it changes as you age, it changes drastically during pregnancy, and it even interacts with other mundane medications.
Oh, absolutely.
If you take an iron supplement, a calcium pill, or even just proton pump inhibitors for heartburn, it can physically block your gut from absorbing the thyroid pill. You have to keep rechecking that TSH.
Because the stakes here are incredibly real. This isn't just about feeling a little sluggish in the afternoon. Subclinical hypothyroidism, where the TSH is just mildly elevated but you don't feel sick yet, affects 4 to 8% of all adults.
So what does this all mean? If you are eyeing those thyroid support pills in the vitamin aisle, or if you're tempted to just guess at a diagnosis based on a quiz you took online, what is the ultimate takeaway? What are the actual stakes?
The takeaway is that knowledge is only valuable when applied correctly. The stakes of total thyroid failure are life and death. In pregnancy, untreated maternal hypothyroidism in the first trimester is deeply linked to miscarriage and permanently impaired fetal brain development because the baby relies entirely on the mother's hormone supply early on.
Wow, so it's critical.
Extremely. And in the elderly, an extreme untreated case can lead to something called mixed edema coma. This is a severe decompensated state, meaning the body has completely exhausted all of its backup systems and ability to adapt. Systems literally shut down, usually triggered by a secondary infection or severe cold exposure.
That sounds terrifying.
Even today, in modern intensive care units with the best medicine available, mixed edema coma has a mortality rate of 20 to 40%. Because the stakes are that undeniably high, trusting unregulated supplements or online pseudodiagnoses over a highly sensitive TSH blood test is a profoundly dangerous game.
It is a biological thermostat that requires respect, precision, and monitoring, not guesswork. It really is an incredible medical journey. We've gone from injecting minced sheep glands in the 1890s, hoping for the best, to saving countless infants from irreversible damage with a 2-drop heel prick today. Thank you for helping us navigate this.
It's been a pleasure, but before we go, there's one final tiny detail from the pathology of this condition that I think flips this entire paradigm on its head.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We've spent this whole time talking about a slow metabolism as a disease or a broken furnace, but there's a recognized phenomenon called sick euthyroid syndrome.
Right. This is where critically ill patients, people suffering major trauma in the ICU, suddenly show incredibly low active thyroid hormone levels, but their thyroid gland isn't actually failing.
Exactly. During critical illness, severe trauma, or major starvation, the body intentionally downregulates T3 to aggressively lower its own metabolism.
Yeah.
It mimics the labs of hypothyroidism, but is doing it on purpose.
It's turning itself down.
Right. Which raises an incredible question. If our bodies purposefully turn down the thermostat to survive severe physical trauma, maybe we shouldn't view a slowing metabolism purely as a broken machine. Perhaps, deep in our evolutionary history, this global systemic slowdown was a brilliant protective mechanism, a way to conserve energy and keep us alive during a famine or a brutal long winter.
That is fascinating.
It really leaves you to wonder how our modern chronic daily stressors might be interacting with this ancient, deeply ingrained survival switch inside your own body today.
So the next time you feel like your internal engine is running out of gas, just remember, your body might not be breaking down. It might just be trying to save you. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.